if something keeps coming up, I'll try to address it, and sort of weighing how big of an issue does it seem to be versus, like how feasible is it, how much time is it going to take me. The internet is like a naughty place, and people will try to like take advantage of platforms, especially when they have a good domain reputation. I got a lot of instances of people like using Liinks to try and do like phishing scams. That was one of the reasons I got rid of the free plan, because I was like, I don't have sort of the resources to like moderate this.
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, Acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is, you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing these crossroads, but too many times the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on Acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. My next guest is a solo founder of a creator product called Liinks, with 2 I's, by the way, which is a link in bio product that started as a side project during COVID time, and now he's making over 300K in annual revenue. That's insane for a solo product, and it's in creator economy. It's insane. I'm excited to like chat about everything that goes on into this guy's mind. Charlie previously worked at Squarespace in the engineering team and has built lots of many projects before. A couple of them I want to mention, which is the one project is so kind of different, and I don't know how he pulled off building that. It's called The Colors of Motion. It's kind of like an exploration of use of color in movies. There is this stack of lines which kind of represents each color they used in a single frame. That's so weird. I let him explain everything, and he's also built called Visual Without an Eye. What's with eyes, Charlie? A
Eyes in the
print on
lack
demand.
thereof. Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's
borrowed
always
one of
trying
the
to
eye
find
from
a domain, Did you try
yeah.
adding an eye, try removing an eye?
It's a print on demand marketplace which is closed, which we can dive into. But this is Charlie Clark. Welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Hey, Sharath. Yeah, really glad to be here. Excited to talk about Liinks and about my other projects over the years, and kind of just what it's like to be a solo founder, the
Yeah.
ups and downs, the highs and lows. Yeah.
First of all, what's up with the eyes? I just observed that you have 2 eyes in Liinks and no eyes. no
Yeah.
I in visual, which is kind
Yeah,
of
so
like a
I like short URLs. And so obviously, you know, the word that I'm going for usually is taken with the sort of popular TLDs.
right.
So yeah, visual, I was like, oh, I can remove the I. And links, I was like, oh, maybe I can add an I. So yeah. I hadn't thought
Why
about the fact that it's always I's up until now, though.
why do you think people should go after short links? Do you have any psychological reason that you've experienced before? Because colors of motion is a big ass URL, by the way.
Yeah,
So
that's true. I think it depends on the type of product, but I think with Visual and Links are both platforms that, users can build to create sort of a shareable URL. And I think for both of those projects, like it was important to have a pretty short URL that can be shared. So that's kind of like my thinking on that. I think for other projects, it maybe doesn't matter as less. Like I think the colors of motion is actually a good URL because it is like it kind of is easy to
explains.
remember and there's nothing like weird about it. Like links, sometimes I have to be like when I'm telling someone about it, it's like, oh yeah, there are two eyes. So it's harder to like share verbally, but I think it's
Right.
good for sharing on like your Instagram profile, for example.
Yeah, you know what? Now that I'm thinking, I know it's kind of, different people have different take on this,
Mm.
maybe, but if you're talking to someone and you're explaining the project you're building and you're kind of explaining a little bit about the name,
Yeah,
kind of making an impression,
that's
links
true.
with two eyes. And
Yeah,
that's what, oh, yeah, that's so weird. Like, or it's not too weird per se, but it's like, yeah, that is different,
yeah.
So there is some psychological, probably some effect, I would say. But yeah, I'm very excited. First of all, 25K MRR is no joke. It's so huge in the environment we're living. It's so hard to like build products, scale, and then become profitable, and then kind of like
Yeah.
cross that milestone, right? So I read one of your interviews from Indie Hackers,
Mhm.
and you kind of mentioned in that interview that you put a milestone. If I hit this, I will go full time, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to understand why 25K, and you recently kind of moved on from your full-time job at
Mhm.
Squarespace, and now you're full-time working as a founder on Liinks.
Mhm.
So talk to me that transition in the last few months,
Yeah.
hitting the milestone, and then first of all, setting the milestone, hitting the milestone, and kind of, you know, uh, going into full time.
Yeah. So I had set that milestone um, more or less because it was sort of a round number, but also because it more or less corresponded to my sort of salary at Squarespace. Like when you included my base, comp and RSUs and all that. So that
Mm,
was kind of like why I had picked that more because I thought that would be, even though the money I'm taking home isn't necessarily exactly the same. It was just sort of that was an easy
sure.
way to sort of think of like, oh, if I can get to that, then it feels like work going to work on this full time doesn't feel like irresponsible kind of. I'll be able to pay myself a good salary, and yeah, it feels like a serious like it's at a serious point now. So that was I
Mm,
think how I kind of set that goal. It probably could have been less. I think I maybe set it a little high because I was scared, honestly, to take the leap. But I did reach it eventually, and yeah, I actually reached it before, like a couple months before I like kind of fully decided to go full time on Links.
mm,
And sort of there were a couple months there of just like wrapping things up, making sure I felt like I was at a good point. I also like had a baby last year, so
congrats.
that was kind of another factor, like trying to take that into consideration. When would be a good time to leave,
Mm,
and also like wanting the flexibility of being self-employed. Like I feel like that became even more sort of important with the baby, just being able to
mm,
like work from home, take a day off, if I need to. So
mm-hmm.
a bunch of reasons for sort of making the decision to leave and focus full time on Liinks. But yeah, it's been good. Like I think the biggest change, obviously, in terms of I have a lot more time to work on Liinks, and I think one really big change is going from like literally just like fighting fires, kind of, when I was working on this part time, to really having all this time to choose what I want to prioritize, and like that just becomes a very different thing where it's like now I need to really yeah, just like there's all these things I could do. I have so much time. How do I choose what to focus on? So that's been an interesting challenge in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think for people who don't know you, you should probably I should have probably started the interview going back to your side projects so that sets the context for Links. But yeah,
Sure.
let's kind of go back. But that's a great logical way of setting goals.
Yeah.
Meeting your salary and kind of matching the reality
Yeah.
where you were in, and kind of not suffering from chasing what you want, right? So that's smart, I would say. But yeah, let's go back to the one of the first projects. I think probably it's talk to me about the colors of motion. Did I explain it right? Did I screw it up? It's so weird. I can't really kind of also understand how did you make that, like
Yeah.
the color codes of every scene, putting in one frame
Yeah.
from a movie.
Sure. Yeah. So
That's
the colors of motion, that was like a really early project. I actually came up with the idea when I was still in school. I went
wow.
to Parsons, the design school in New York, and I had a project, data visualization project. And I was like, it would be really cool to visualize the colors of movies. And so at the time, I was actually teaching myself how to code in an ActionScript, which was like the programming language for Flash. So this is like, you know, 14 years ago. Um, and I wrote a really basic script to basically take a movie file, um, extract frames, and then average out the frame, the colors in the frame, and sort of present it as this like it's almost like a barcode, right? Of like series
Hmm.
of colors. And I did that as this kind of like interactive experience thing. And then a few years later, I was working at an ad agency and I wanted to do a side project. And I kind of revisited that idea and decided to turn them into posters that I could try and sell. So that's kind of how that started. I started selling them on Etsy, like printing them myself and like actually dealing with like the shipping and all of that. And that was a real pain in the ass. And that got me thinking about print on demand. I learned about like the concept of print on demand, how you can sort of outsource these things. You upload your file and some other company will actually take care of printing and shipping them. And so that's kind of what led me to my other big project, which was visual with no I. And that was actually something I built to sort of make it easy to set up a shop and sell your prints,
Hmm.
and have them be fulfilled. So that was a big project. I recently quit my full-time job to focus on Liinks, but 4 years ago I actually did the same thing. In 2019 I quit, and actually took a year to sort of develop visual, which that was the initial idea. I wanted to like build out visual.
Hmm.
Um, I had the idea. I thought it would be a cool project, and I had saved up a good amount of money. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I spent maybe 6 or 7 months building visual. And then I was finished with my site and I was trying to get users. And I just was spending a lot of time on Instagram, mostly looking for artists and trying to like reach out, cold email them and be like, hey, I built this thing. Do you want to try it out? Um, and I noticed that a lot of artists were using Linktree, and some other link in bio
Yep.
tools, but like these really simple website builders. And that's when I kind of like decided to take a break from visual and build links. And so I,
Hmm.
I actually did that. I think I got the MVP up in a couple weeks. Um,
Well.
and just kind of for a while, I was doing both of those projects on the side. Um, I ended up going back to work full time when COVID hit because I kind
Hmm.
of wasn't making any money off my side projects, and then worked on those side projects, nights and weekends, and gradually visual kind of like never really took off, but Liinks did to an extent, and just kind of really steadily grew over about 4 years now. So that's kind of, I guess, to answer your question about colors of motion, and then take it to the present day of how those projects kind of like each led to the next.
Yeah, I think it's all interlinked, and that's what I really love about this pretty famous quote from Steve Jobs, right? Like, you can't really connect the dots going forward. You can only look back and say, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I did this because of that, because of like something I did in like 2-3 years ago. So it's all, I think, connected, but it's so many follow-up questions. So let's talk about like colors of motion for a bit. How did you convince people to buy the posters? And I looked at it. It's kind of basically like so many colors
Yeah.
in a single sheet, right?
Yeah.
So what was your kind of marketing campaign? Did you do like something that's convinced people like, yeah, let me buy?
I actually really never did much marketing for Colors of Motion. I think I actually don't really know why that project was so successful. I think for a lot of people, like the idea, like if they get it, it's just like kind of like there's like this kind of moment of like, oh, that's so cool. I can see this movie, in one
One
print.
frame.
And I think that that really resonated with some people. Some people are just like, what? I don't understand this. But for some people, they really like it. And yeah, it's cool. Like I get emails still now from like sometimes actors or directors of movies that I've seen or like who are like, hey, can you make this for my movie? I've actually
Wow.
like stopped the shop for a bit because I didn't really have time, but I still like will sometimes do these one-off requests for people. So that's kind of fun. And
Who
yeah,
did
I
you
don't
work
know. I
with?
think
Like, do you have like any popular movies that you did like on request? I'm curious.
yeah, well, recently I don't know if I should share this. Um, Yeah, recently actually this actor Domhnall Gleeson, I'm actually not even sure if that's how you pronounce his name. He's Irish and he's in a bunch of movies that I like, and he reached out and asked me if I could make or actually send him some files of some of the posters that I had made because I'm not selling them anymore. So that was really fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, go ahead. You were telling about colors of motion.
Yeah. So marketing, it was really early. Like I started doing it on Etsy. I think that was good because, Etsy has like, it's a marketplace that has sort of SEO built in so people can find stuff
Hmm.
um, without you needing to really actively promote it. Um, I did some like fairs, which was kind of like artist fairs in New York, where I just like
That's
went
nice.
with posters and sold them physically to people. I didn't do too many of those because it's a lot of work. Um, but I think I think because it was so early, also like I think there are other companies that do this now, but it has good SEO. Like if you Google like the
Hmm.
colors of movies, it's one of the top results. So lots
Hmm.
of reasons. Once in a while, someone will discover it and post it on Reddit. So I still get like a lot of traffic there. But I need to reopen the shop and start selling those posters again because,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think there are like so many new ones that came out. I'm sure you'll
yeah,
have
lots
a
of them.
handful of fans like going I think one of the ideas I had when you were explaining kind of the average color of like certain scenes
Yeah,
from the movie. It would be super dope if, because I went to the website and I clicked on it and it actually showed me the color of that particular frame
yeah.
or a particular bar. It would be super dope if you actually show the scene.
So that's actually a really funny story. It used to. And
Oh,
I spoke to a lawyer, and the lawyer was like, you should not do that because it's copyrighted.
got it.
So yeah. So basically, you know, I could get into trouble if I did that. But it is possible, but it's not available, unfortunately.
Got it. I think it would be dope to actually hover on it and then you show the visual and you can probably, I don't know, I'm not a
Yeah.
lawyer, but I think that would be like super cool to see. Oh, the
Yeah.
color is picked from the scene. I'm like, oh, I'm so attached to this. Take
Yeah.
Dark Knight in the scene where Batman kind of like stands at the top of the one of the buildings in
Mm.
New York. It's like if you put that scene from that
Yeah.
color, I would like that is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Let's buy it.
No,
So
yeah, no.
anyway,
Yeah. But
uh,
yeah, unfortunately, I'm like kind of risk averse. Like sometimes I get scared of these things.
mhm.
So like yeah, I probably nothing would ever happen, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to get sued by, Warner Brothers
Warner
or
Brothers.
whatever. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So it made some money. Uh, and you saw an opportunity for print on demand. You build visual. What do you think that didn't go well with visual? That's like something that you learned
Yeah.
that you want to like kind of share with others.
Yeah, so I think one of the big mistakes I made with visual is I I spent a lot of time building it without sort of sharing it and getting feedback.
Mm,
I just kind of was really set on this idea, and I convinced myself that like I can build something that will be better than what's out there. And I think to an extent, like it was a really cool product. Like artists really loved it because they could set up their store page and it looked really good. And I also was really I wanted the quality of the prints to be really good. So I like you was using printers that, did pretty high quality stuff. Um, so I think there's kind of two things that I did wrong. I think one, I should have probably like earlier on validated that this was something that people wanted, not just that I thought was cool. And I think to an extent I got lucky in that like one side of it was true and that like artists liked it. And so they I was able to like get a lot of artists on the platform. I think the part that I didn't validate and that I really should have is make sure that there was like enough demand for like prints at that price point.
mm,
Because I think basically, what I've sort of realized in hindsight is that like I think art is really interesting and that like you have the sort of like art that you put up in your home that,
mm,
for the most part, like you don't want to spend too much money. Like you want it to look nice, but you don't want to spend too much money on it. And then you have people who like are really into art and they're willing to spend a lot on stuff that's like limited editions or like signed prints or like originals. So I think
mm,
what I kind of did wrong is I think I positioned myself too much in the middle where I was going for quality, but also like there was nothing about the prints that was really special and unique, because just of the fact that it was print on demand. Like they weren't signed by artists. There wasn't like a way to really do limited editions. So all of these things, I think, made it so that it worked a little bit, but never really took off. I also like did a really bad job thinking about just the like business side of it, and it would have, in order to make money, it would have had to like done so much like the margins are so thin on these things that like you
mm.
need to be like doing a lot of GMV to actually make like a decent profit. So it just
And
never
then,
really.
yeah, then you got the idea from talking to potential customers, like in this case, artists.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had is why the hell link in bio? At that point during COVID, it was
Yeah.
like a rise of creator economy wave, and so many products were doing the same. And
Yeah.
I personally know friends who built founder friends who actually built. A couple of them they got shut down. A couple of them, of course, they got kind of acquired
Mhm.
by others. And yeah, why links? Like when people are already using Linktree,
Yeah.
there is Buy Me a Coffee. They did like a product which is also kind of like link in bio. There's
Yeah.
so many. I can go on and on about.
There are so many. Yeah.
Yeah, so many. So why, and when you said it's kind of your risk averse, it's
Mhm.
kind of taking a risk in a way to
Yeah.
go in a very crowded market. So
Yeah.
talk to me about your thinking in your mind when you actually kind of talk to the artists and potential customers during that process.
Yeah. I think in the way that I sort of thought about it at the time, and I think maybe if I were to do it now, I would do it differently. But I sort of saw, I kind of was so focused on Linktree as being like the big player in the space that I kind of was like, I think if I can do something that's better and cheaper than Linktree, I can like cut off some of that very large addressable market. And so that was, and I also, it just seemed like a pretty simple project. So I think coming from like having worked on
Hmm.
visual for so long, which was a very complex project, there was like so much, like you had the the buyer side, the seller side, like all this sort of stuff around the print quality and the print on demand. And I sort of saw Liinks as like, oh, I could
Hmm.
build this maybe in a couple weeks using a lot of the stuff that I'd already figured out for visual, like a lot of the sort of infrastructure and components. I kind of just like used that as a starting point. And I just thought like, I'm going to try this and see what happens. And I think one of the features that I thought that Linktree didn't have, I actually don't know if they have it now, but it was something that I thought was really important at the time, was like a way to add links to your Instagram captions and have those like automatically be added to your link in bio. So like there are other products that do that. Like Later does that, and there are a couple others. But I was like, oh, that would be a cool thing to like integrate into like a more traditional link in bio tool.
Hmm.
Um, and I also just thought that I could make it so that you could like customize your page so that it would be kind of more personalized than Linktree. I also like initially it was a free product. Like I started it as a completely free thing. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just like try this and see what happens. And so I think I got a lot of early users because it was free and
Hmm.
um, the UX was nice. And then I kind of like over time added features, added the paid plan. Eventually got rid of the free plan altogether. So yeah, it kind of happened organically. I think I didn't think about it too much at the time. I was just like, this will be a fun distraction, and yeah, it worked out.
It worked out so
Yeah,
well that you're full time now.
yeah,
Congrats on that. And yeah, so talk to me that there are like so many details you just, kind of ra- kind of casually answered, like,
yeah.
So was it always I really like what you said, which is the intention is to not go big.
Mhm,
Just treat it as an experiment. It's like a
mhm.
side project, put it out and see how it works. And I feel most of these projects, at least the successful ones I know and everybody else knows, they all started like from a area of curiosity
Yeah,
or like an experiment, right? But you came out of full time, you're working on this, you went back to Squarespace. At what point you're like, yeah, I need to like kind of double down. I want to again go full time. Was it was it was like that, or was it like, okay, let's roll with it, let's see how this goes. If it reaches some point at some place in the future, I'll go
yeah,
full time. So talk to me about that, working through, and then we I want to also ask about the tactical stuff, which is why free plan, you know transitioning from free to pricing,
yeah.
how did that work, and what are the things that you learned from whole the building of Links?
Yeah, so I guess to answer the first question around like when did I decide or when did I know that I wanted to go full time? I think I always kind of have known that I wanted to do my own thing. And I think that's why I took that initial like year off where I tried to develop something. And I think honestly, like if Links had done better, like I think if either Links had done better earlier in that year off, or if COVID hadn't hit, I think I probably would have like waited longer, and maybe I would never have gone back to work full time. I don't know. Um,
Hmm.
I think COVID was pretty impactful because at the time I had just launched Links. It was like I was still just doing the free thing. It wasn't even making money yet. And so that was kind of when I decided that I wanted to go back, like have a salary again. Um, and I basically did that, went back to work, and then like as I was working on Liinks on the side, kind of it started growing and all of that. But I I definitely didn't feel like I could have gone back to Liinks. Like I guess because I had already done that thing of like I took my year off. I built these projects. I felt like in order to actually do it again, to like leave my job again, I needed to really hit like a, a point where I felt really confident that I could sort of sustain myself with it. And yeah, for me it was basically, you know, getting to a point where it was almost my salary. And I think in it, I also like, you know, I have my partner and like my now my baby and all these things that I was thinking about. Even 4 years ago, I was thinking like, oh, I want to have a kid. Like, so I guess I just, for a lot of reasons, I didn't feel like I could make the leap to like making this my full time thing until a couple months ago, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was growing. You said growing. That's the tactical stuff I want to talk
Mhm.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are like a million Lincoln Bio products.
Yeah.
How did you market it? Like, what is the thing that you did day to day basis that actually helped links grow on an organic basis?
Yeah.
Was this was there any kind of like an aha moment
Mhm.
in the marketing side? Okay, I have to do this so that I could get more users.
So I actually wouldn't say that there was a aha moment for me, and I still like it's still something that I'm not amazing at, I think, the marketing side of things. But I think one thing that I did early on that was a lot of work, but that I think paid off was like really doing a lot of cold outreach and even like spending
Mm,
time. Like I would find, you know, artists or influencers or whatever who either were using Linktree or another service or not using anything. And I would either like try to rebuild their page using links or like build them what I think would be a good page for them and like be like, hey, I did this for you. Like, do you want to start using it? And you know, a good number of people did end up either switching or starting to use links. And that was really cool, I think, for two reasons. One was like just getting like that URL in people's like Instagram bios or TikTok bios or whatever, like that helps people sort of like know about the brand and like then they'll maybe like click on the little
mm-hmm.
made with, you know, the
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
powered
The
by
embed. Yeah.
yeah, or just like Google it or whatever. And then I think it also really helped me to get users early on, just to like learn more about what people wanted and stuff. And so I think you know the growth. I think I got growth through that and sort of like just the fact that early on it was a free product that I think early on it was an easy sell compared to Linktree because first of all there were a lot fewer sort of tools out there. There was still a good number, but like there were fewer.
Mm,
Um, and I think being able to say like, hey, I've got like a free version of this tool that does a lot of the same things, and you can like make your page look nicer. That was pretty like a pretty easy sell. Um, and then I think with time, as like I got more of a user base and shipped more and more functionality, I think it kind of became a different thing where it's less about like my tool is like more affordable than the alternative and more like, oh, I found these features that people like, that are just different from what some of the other tools have to offer. I think part of it is just like what sort of user experience do you like? You know, like some of the tools
mm-hmm.
are a little clunkier or just focused on different like aspects of the functionality. And then yeah, I think as I kind of did less and less of the individual outreach and stuff and tried to figure out how to sort of market it in a more sort of scalable way, I tried, you know, paid ads and doing things with like I guess one thing I did or started doing early on was like trying to feature users who use links a lot, both on social media, but also just like featuring them in like I have like a customers page on the website. So like
Right.
I'll send them an email. It's all automated, but like if I see a profile I like, I'll send them an email and be like, hey, you're featured, and like so then they'll be excited that they're featured, and they'll often like post about it. So like I get some good organic traffic that way.
Mm.
And there's just something about these link in bio tools that sort of have this inherent viral loop, I guess, which is like you see it because it's in people's bio, and like the more people have it, because a lot of these tools are pretty similar, I think a big part of it is just like name recognition. And I think that's one of the reasons why Linktree is so successful, is like they were the first to market in this like very sort of specific kind of space. And when people think about link in bio, they think about Linktree. So I think like there's such I can't remember what the term is, but like a big part of it is like who came to market earlier, I think. And I think it's harder and harder for new sort of tools to break into the space just because there are so many already, and you have to offer something really novel, I guess, or like really undercut the competition to like get in at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. One of the fascinating things I kind of observed is, this was, I think, around COVID time, around 2020, you kind of started
Yep.
it as a side project. And I've known many creator products. I've built a creator product myself called Shoutout,
Mhm.
and not many survived today. It's like 2024. Of course, Linktree has become big, so it
Yep.
survived. Especially LinkedIn bio products, they just died, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very curious, how did you made it sustainable,
Mhm.
profitable,
Mhm.
and kind of like growing?
Yeah.
This growth is not stopping, and you were
Yeah.
doing everything as a solo founder.
Mhm.
You don't have a team, if I assume it right.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk to me about like the growth aspect of it, like putting a dollar point, asking people money.
Mhm.
When things got really bad, I think 2022 is when I saw so many creator products dying. Like
Mhm.
2022, 23, it's like the market went down.
Yeah.
Creators are like, "Hey, we can't afford paying." So yeah, talk to me about the whole wave and how you managed still riding the wave.
So I think I don't actually have perfect answers for any of this stuff, but I think one of the big things that played into my sort of advantage was that like the fact that I was a solo founder. So I think, the fact that I'm a software engineer,
Mm,
that I'm able to like basically I didn't need a team to keep this thing going. Like I was able to do everything on my own. I think, a lot of the companies that did struggle are companies that either raised some VC or didn't really have the resources to like keep building and growing the thing. Luckily, and I think one of the reasons why I've always wanted to build things is like because I'm able to, and I feel like I can sort of build projects. And I think a lot of the stuff is changing now with AI. Like it's becoming a lot more accessible, but 4 years ago it wasn't as accessible for your average person to just like build a product and all on their own. So I think that was good for me in that like when a lot of companies maybe were running out of runway or trying to figure out
got it.
how to keep going, they sort of faced the option of either like they needed like hyper growth, right, to like
Mm,
warrant their investment or whatever. And I was able to just kind of like, as you said, sort of ride the wave and be like, oh, this is, at the time it wasn't even like income that I needed. Like it was just like a side project thing. So I was like, doesn't really, I don't need to grow it like crazy because I can sort of take my time.
mm,
I think there's another side to that, which is that like you can maybe grow too slow, and like if you're not shipping enough features, like do you lose out to the competition, things like that. But it seemed, at least so far it's gone okay for me in that yeah, I've managed to like keep that sort of steady trickle of growth. I will say, in full transparency, like my growth has sort of plateaued. I've actually been
mm,
stuck at 25K MRR for like the last couple months. I think part of
mm,
that is like I haven't increased my ad spend, so I think it's kind of like sort of plateaued to this point where my growth is basically matching my churn. And that's one of the things I'm trying to figure out. Like, how do I how do I get back to growing? Do I need to improve my marketing or my activation or just like ship more features? And that's kind of what I was getting to at the beginning, where I was like, it's hard to pick what to prioritize. So I'm trying a bunch of things right now, different things, to try and get back.
And it looks like it's mostly product led growth, like because of the embed in
Yep.
getting the link in creators profile either on
Yep.
Instagram, wherever it is. So the brand is part of it, and I saw the website. It's kind of, it gives me that retro vibe, the colorful retro vibe.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the design, the
Yeah.
aspect of. I think you seem like someone who has an artistic kind of like a side of building things, right?
Mhm.
Because you probably worked with a couple of projects are on the artist side, and you have
Yep.
that knack, it seems like. So yeah, when you design such a product that is so common,
Mhm.
how did you approach UX wise, UI wise? How did you approach links
Yeah.
as a designer?
Yeah. So I do think, yeah, definitely. I think I like to think that compared to, a lot of software engineers, I do have a bit of a design taste. And I think part of that is I actually went to school for design. Like I didn't study computer science or anything. I studied graphic design. So I do have that kind of in my at least educational background. I never have worked as a designer, but I did always try to, like, when I'm building something, make sure it looks good. And so yeah, I think one thing that I sort of got at a bit before was that like I reused a lot of the stuff I did for visual with links, like a lot of the components, a lot of the way of thinking about like personalizing your page. And so I think just even from a like tools for the user, like I was thinking about, how can they make their page look good. And so I think that's for some users that's really important, right? Like they want to really customize their page.
Mm,
And then in terms of the actual like design of the site, I usually like just sort of design as I'm coding, and try to create components that look good and that are sort of
mm,
uh, functional. The landing page for links is not something that I designed. That was like one of the times I did outsource some work. So I actually hired a Ukrainian agency to just like redesign the landing page, and then I built it out. But that was like one
interesting.
instance where I felt like my design skills from like a sort of marketing design are not so good. I think from like a more functional UX perspective, I'm okay at doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, for the landing page, I was actually like, oh, I'm gonna see what an
Mm,
agency could do. I did end up reworking it quite a bit because there were some things that I didn't love, but yeah, kind of like got to a point with that where I'm happy with how it feels. And even though it's actually quite a different design language from the actual like app admin, I feel like there's enough cohesion that it's not like super jarring when you create your account and land in the dashboard. Um, so yeah, I think definitely want to make sure the users have like a good experience, both when they land on the site and also when they're, you know, building their page. Like that's I think very important, especially when there is, as you said, so much competition in that space. Like I think
mm-hmm.
trying to have it be a pleasant experience, is one of the things that keeps users sort of coming back.
Yeah, for sure. And you were doing links, you're building links while you're working at Squarespace.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you worked at like weekends,
Mhm.
late nights.
Mhm.
What's it like to kind of work at a design first company like Squarespace? It's,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of Squarespace. I think, as a matter of fact, one of the first few websites I've created as a non technical person,
Mhm.
I use Squarespace.
Cool.
It's like
Yeah.
so cool to like build like something out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, talk to me about the influence of Squarespace, meaning uh, the processes, the things that you learned
Yeah.
building something like bigger
Yeah.
for a bigger market,
Yeah.
and taking those lessons and kind of doing something for yourself on the side project for links. Like,
Yeah.
what are the lessons, or at least the inspiration, from your working it full time in
Yeah.
building that side project?
Yeah. I think, there's kind of a couple different things. One, just from an engineering standpoint, like I learned so much at Squarespace about like how to build an app that I wouldn't have been able to do before. Before Squarespace, I worked at ad agencies, and it was very different. We were building like kind of flashy microsites that didn't really have much functionality. So um, that's super important for me. Like the first time I coded with React was at Squarespace. Like I learned a lot of stuff about just building products. So that's super important. Although that I think I probably could have learned in other tech companies, but I would say the big sort of influence I think from working at Squarespace is in kind of the importance of like having your app feel good and have like a good experience and trying to make sure that the users really like enjoy interacting with the product. I think it's more than just like fulfilling a function of like I want to build my website or my link in bio. It's like you want it to feel sort of smooth and have a good experience. And I think one other thing that was cool about working at Squarespace and one of my teams specifically was really focused on activation and like how to, get users to discover how to learn more about the product and get started. And I definitely feel like I've incorporated a lot of those things into, or tried to incorporate some of those things into Liinks in terms of like, how do I get users to go from like signing up to discovering how to use the product. Liinks is a much simpler product than Squarespace, so it's a lot easier to do that. But I think that's still something that I've taken a lot from what I learned at Squarespace.
Any frameworks that you want to share with us about, especially related to product, like retention,
Mhm.
activation,
Mhm.
and also handling churn? Like how do you
Yeah.
bring back people? Did you use, not from a, again, there is a marketing side of things if for everything that we talked about, but there is also like a product influence, right?
Mhm.
Making the product sticky, for
Mhm.
example. So
Yeah.
yeah, talk to me about how you kind of managed user activation,
Mhm.
user retention, the growth, everything from a really purely from a product stand. Anything that you've implemented that sticked out and you want to share
Mhm.
with us so that people can learn?
Yeah, I think again, like this, some of this stuff is probably pretty standard, but just stuff that I've done that I've enjoyed doing and I feel like is useful is A/B testing, especially activation stuff. Like I use Amplitude, which has like a free tier. And so whenever I like make a significant change to either like the landing page or the onboarding experience, I always run that as an A/B test just to make sure that it's not actually doing more harm than good. So that I think is something that if you have enough traffic to like be able to get meaningful like data, it's definitely like a valuable thing to do. I think also sort of the taking that with a grain of salt of like if you think it's good for your users and maybe the data isn't exactly showing you what you want to see, like don't be too focused on the A/B test. But I think when what you're trying to do is really optimize like a specific thing, yeah, A/B testing is really great. And then in terms of churn, I think one thing that I've tried to do a lot is make it easy for customers to like suggest like improvements. So like one of the things in the Liinks dashboard is like I've got like a suggestion box where people can just suggest new ideas, and I try to prioritize those things because I feel like one, maybe it'll stop people from churning like active users, and then often the things that people want are things other users want. So I do like not only shipping the features that users ask for, but trying to like do enough of that to keep them happy. Um, and then another thing that I've found useful that there's a lot of different ways to implement it. I did it in a very simple way, but like when users go to downgrade, I just like in a new tab open a Google form, like that with some questions about the product and why they're leaving, and actually get like a lot of good responses there that are often very actionable. So not actually I know some products have these really involved like cancellation flows. Like, are you sure you want to downgrade? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't. I try to not make it hard for users to downgrade because I feel like that's kind of a bit of a dark pattern. But I do like think it's a good opportunity to learn why they left. And actually, one thing I want to start doing is um, like emailing users that have downgraded
Right.
and trying to actually have conversations with them. Now that I have more time, like I feel like it would be a good thing to actually try and talk to some of these people and see. Yeah.
And yeah, talk to me about the last piece, which is churn happened. You got some feedback.
Mhm.
How do you decide, prioritize? Because a lot of times, well, I mean, again, it's like different people, different answers.
Yeah.
I want to understand your approach of if you get like 10 to 20 new requests and you
Yeah.
also have a roadmap of your own,
Mhm.
balance it out like what people want, measure. Do you use data or like uh, what is it like to kind of do that?
Yeah. It's kind of I don't have a super specific framework. I would say like if something keeps coming up, I'll try to address it. If and sort of weighing how big of an issue does it seem to be
Mm-hmm.
versus, like how feasible is it? How much time is it going to take me? There are a few things that have been sort of recurring requests that I've just never dealt with because I felt like I didn't have enough time to build a good solution. Like one thing that comes up a lot is custom forms. Like users want a way to just like build a custom form on their page so that they can collect sort of arbitrary data. And that's something that's always I've never done. Or like a way to sell products. Like I haven't actually. There's no way to just like sell digital products on Liinks. And part of my reasoning for not doing those things is going back to my risk aversion. Like I've experienced a lot of like people doing bad stuff, both on visual and links. Like the internet is like a naughty place, and people will try to to like take advantage of platforms, especially when they have like a good
Sure.
domain reputation. So one thing that like has always, and actually this is the reason why I got rid of the free plan. Um, a lot of I got a lot of instances of people like using links to try and do like phishing scams. And so like they would create a page that looks like a
Yeah, some
login page for your
celebrity.
bank account or whatever. It
Right.
wouldn't actually collect any information because I didn't have custom forms, but it would like link out to some form they had hosted on like Wix or something.
Got
And,
it.
that way, I think the idea is that like if you send that in an email or something, like um, Gmail won't think it's bad because the domain has a good reputation. So yeah, that was one of the reasons I got rid of the free plan because I was like, I don't have sort of the resources to like moderate this. I do think now it probably would be easier with AI to sort of like set up some kind of, just use like LLMs to like look at the
Mm-hmm.
information you have about the user and determine if it's bad or not. But at this point, I think I've kind of boxed myself out of bringing back a free plan because I have users who are paying for what could
Yeah.
now be a free feature. So I don't know. It gets complicated. So I don't think I'll do that anytime soon. But it is kind of an interesting situation where, like, I ended up getting rid of functionality because of the way people were abusing it, which is kind of sucks. But I don't know. It might have been better for business. I don't really know. I don't have a way of knowing for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, I'm curious now that we have another wave. Everybody's riding the AI wave.
Yeah.
How are you thinking the future of links? What kind of, if you want to share, of course, like I wouldn't put a pressure on you. Uh, the features you want to build next
Mhm.
using AI. Do you want to bring AI into the picture? Like what's what's your take on the next few years for links?
It's a really good question. Yeah, I feel like right now I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get done, and I'm kind of like almost there of just like some refreshing of my code base and some sort of improvements to my activation flows and stuff like that. I'm just now starting to think about like what are the next big features that I want to build. I don't have anything sort of in the near term that is like super AI enabled. I think, some of the big things that I do want to add are like the custom forms, as you said, as I said earlier, and potentially sort of a way to buy products. I think I want to use AI on the moderation side of those. Like I want to be able to like automatically detect if someone is trying to do a phishing scam with custom forms, like stuff like that. So I do want to use AI in the sort of near term as like a moderation tool. I played around a bit with like using AI as part of the onboarding experience, like, you know, trying to make it so you could automatically generate a page based on some like either an existing URL or stuff like that. But I think the big sort of question mark for me is like, am I going to start using AI in my coding? I haven't.
I was
I've been
I
using.
was I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
literally about to ask you that, like, how much of your day to day is basically relying on AI. So, like, one of the things I've been kind of asking
Yeah.
my previous guest said the same thing. I think they're kind of putting some code, uh, built by AI into
Uh,
their code base. So, yeah, curious on that. Like, on a day to day basis, how much are you using AI?
yeah. I use it a lot. I'm still for now just using ChatGPT as in a more sort of like conversational code technique. Like I'll if there's something I want to use, some library or something, I'll use ChatGPT to like help me avoid reading documentation. Like I'll be like, oh, how would I do this with this library? And it often gets it right,
Hmm.
or at least gets me in the right direction. Stuff with like DevOps stuff, like doing anything sort of in my on my server where I run Liinks. Like I find it really useful because I can, instead of just going through a bunch of Google, whatever Stack Overflow stuff, I can just get answers a lot quicker. I haven't yet started using it like integrated in an IDE. Like I briefly took a look at I think it's Cursor, right? Is the
Cursor,
one,
yeah.
yeah, that sort of is almost like a AI first editor, and
Yeah.
I didn't I don't know. I wasn't ready. So I think in a way it's probably easier for people who don't know how to code, who haven't coded as much as I have, to like start using those tools. But for me it's like I don't know. I've been coding for 12 years, 14
Wow.
years, and I think that it's going to be a bit harder for me to like take my foot off the pedal of like liking to write code and sort of relying more on AI. But I think at some point I'm going to do it, and I think I'll probably do it on a new project as opposed to like with Liinks.
Hmm.
Part of it is just because like the Liinks code base is probably not the best. um like I think a lot of these AI tools, like they work really well if you're using a very standard sort of like Next.js kind of boilerplate framework thing, because it can
Hmm.
understand how it's structured and everything. Links is like definitely non-standard in terms of the way it was built. Yeah,
Couple of more questions before we wrap up. One is, you've done everything solo.
yeah,
Why? Have you looked at like collaborating with others? Why going solo
yeah.
every time?
I have like partnered with people once in a while. Like I've worked with people on a few of on like visual. I worked with someone a bit on Links. I worked with someone who helped me with some sort of growth stuff early on. Um, I think it's challenging for me because I struggle with delegating. I think
Hmm.
part of it is that I often feel like I could do it myself. Um, Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's kind of how I feel. And I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, so I think I often like have trouble like letting someone like really take on a lot of
Hmm.
of the stuff I work on. I think part of it is also that, yeah, like the stuff that I could delegate, it's kind of like different stuff than I think that like your sort of average CEO would delegate. Like I think your average CEO might delegate like the code part of the project, or like the design part. And I guess because I like doing that stuff, that's not what I like to delegate, except some design aspects. But yeah, I probably should more, especially now that I have more time to sort of like be involved in that. I think especially when I was, only working a few hours a week on Liinks, it was really hard to delegate because I just didn't have much time to like partner with whoever I was delegating to. Yeah.
Founder mode.
Yeah, yeah, right. It is, yeah, it's hard to delegate. And I guess part of it also just selfishly, I'm like, the more I delegate, the less sort of like money I have to keep, or whatever. Like, am I, either I'm giving away sort of ownership or money, and like, right now this is sort of my source of income. So it's sometimes hard to sort of like make the investment of I'm going to delegate and like have less sort of income or profit up front, and then that'll pay off like in a couple months or whatever. I find
Yeah,
it easier when it's like one-off like expenses, like the redesign of the landing page, that was like a one-off, a couple $1,000s, like that's, whereas like hiring someone, I don't know, that seems daunting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking about like equity ownership, is this why you want to pick, or you're doing bootstrapping over raising money? Was that always your, you know, uh, game plan? What is your take on VC?
I wouldn't say that like the ownership is the main reason for me not trying to raise VC. I think for me, I sort of thought about what raising VC would mean in terms of like how it would affect the way I am building this product. And I guess to me, it sounded like what that would mean is basically needing to go after growth, like at all costs, kind of. And I think what I've really enjoyed about Liinks is like it's allowed me to have a really nice sort of work-life balance with regards to this project. Like I had a like we had a baby last year in October. I didn't basically touch Liinks for 5 months. And like the occasional customer support request, but like I didn't ship any new functionality. Like I didn't really do anything
Mm-hmm.
meaningful. Um, and like that was fine. That wouldn't be fine if I had, investors breathing down my neck. So I think that's just been a personal choice of like I don't really want to do the go big or go home thing, and I'm happy to just try and kind of keep growing this, see where it goes, and do it on my own terms.
Got it. And it's been like awesome talking to you in the last 1 hour. So many interesting takes. And appreciate you for sharing your story. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I think my main thought and sort of advice and takeaway from all of this is just that, like just build stuff. It's fun, you learn a lot, and you never know where it's going to go. And it's getting easier and easier. So, if you're someone who's sort of like interested in this space, and I think, also not overthinking it, and just kind of going for it and see what happens.
Perfect. That's the best way. Build and learn.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
and repeat. Charlie, appreciate you for joining the show and sharing everything. But that's it, folks. That's like another banger for you. Ship, go build, go ship, and repeat. And stay tuned for more founders hopping on the show. Until then, cheers.